Okay, so after my first attempt at Japanese cheesecake that didn't turn out so well, I decided I needed to make it again. I found a different recipe this time, hoping that was the only issue, and jumped right into it. So initially, I followed this new recipe to the letter. It basically involved putting a bowl over a pot of hot water and then mixing everything in that bowl, and it all kind of melts together. You add all of the ingredients in stages, and I did just that, and it actually came together pretty easily, and it made a really nice, smooth, creamy batter. Then you whip up the egg whites to soft peak, fold them into the batter, and you end up with extra fluffy batter. Now the instructions say to use an 8-inch pan, but it says if you don't have one, you can use a 9-inch, and I have my 9-inch springform. Then you're supposed to line the bottom with paper and grease it with butter, and then you're supposed to cut a strip of parchment paper, grease that with butter, and then put that along the edge of the pan. This is supposed to help release the cake really easily when it's done. Really, it just made a mess on my counter. Now to put the butter on the parchment, you can either spread it directly from the stick, use a pastry brush, or if you have looked for your pastry brush but can't seem to find it anywhere, get a wad of paper towels and that works just as well. So after the paper's all set up, we pour our batter into the pan, realize the paper wasn't quite up against the edge, and now it's kind of leaking between the paper and the pan, but we'll just ignore that for now and hope everything turns out okay. Now this particular recipe was super specific with baking and cooling temperatures, and those can actually be really, really important with souffle, sponge cake, things like that. So after baking on the highest temperature for about 20 minutes, you lower it and bake it for another 30 minutes. Then you turn the oven off, leaving it closed, and let the cake sit in the turned off oven for another 30 minutes. Then you take the water bath out and leave the cake in the oven by itself and crack the door a little bit and leave that for 30 minutes. It's a really complicated cool down method, but I thought, you know what? If I can make this cake look like all the fluffy, spongy, jello-y, bouncy cakes that I keep seeing on the internet, I'll do it. I just want the bounce. And miraculously, the cake didn't sink like the first one I ever made did. This was really promising, but I had to wait and see if it would start sinking after it sat on the counter for a while, because sometimes they do that. They sink behind your back. So it looked really nice, but I didn't trust it. While waiting for this one, I still had time, so I decided to make a second cake. There was another recipe I found where the mixing method was a lot simpler. For that recipe, you basically mix it like any other cake or cookies. You just put stuff in a bowl in the right order, mix it with a hand blender or stand mixer, and you end up with batter. I wasn't sure if it would make a difference having one that was melted with heat and one that was not melted at all, so I wanted to try it. There was also a separate cooling method for the second recipe, and I realized, yes, I changed the mixing method and the cooling method in the same test. No, that's not scientific. I don't care. So the cooking and cooling method for the other recipe was just to bake it for a little over an hour, and then when it was done, crack the oven open and let the cake cool in the oven for about an hour. And you can see here the top started to sink while it was cooling, but it's still spongy. Now for both cakes, I used the exact same amount of ingredients. All I changed was the mixing method and then the baking and cooling methods. So the amount of the ingredients weren't variables. And here you can see the first cake actually looks pretty good. It stayed up, the top is still puffy, and this has been by far the best one that's turned out so far. Or so I thought. The second one looks kind of like a mushroom cloud, but it's still spongy. It just collapsed a little bit. I am not entirely sure why. I think it was because of the cooling method. So then I had to cut them open and see what the insides were like. Remember how I said I thought that first one turned out perfect? Well, I was super excited to cut it open, and I took a piece, and what is that? The heck is that? What is that layer on the bottom of the cake? What is that? What? It's like the texture of cheese, like cheddar cheese or something. What? I don't even know what that could be. It was so beautiful on the outside. It was so deceptive, because I thought it was finally perfect. Now the second cake, despite collapsing somewhat, did not have a weird cheese layer on the bottom. It was perfectly fine. And it was fluffy, but it wasn't light and fluffy. It was kind of dense and fluffy. You know what that texture's like? No, because it's not very common, and it's not really one that you want in a cake. Dense and fluffy. It's too opposite. Everybody makes this cake look so easy. I just don't know. I'm gonna have to figure this out. I think I'll go try making this again right now. So stay tuned for more. If you want to learn stuff with me, hit that subscribe button. If you know the magic secret to Japanese cheesecake, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you guys later. Bye!